Good evening, friends. This is Vibha Nashin, and I'm doing a reading from the book Messages from the Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. We're continuing from where we had left for chapter 4. This is part 2 of chapter 4. So we begin. See the other person clearly and don't put that person on a pedestal. Your parents, your teachers, your authority figures are just people like you. They have their own fears, doubts, anxieties, and imperfections. They also have their own agendas, and sometimes you are a pawn in their games. See them as equals, as your brothers and sisters. Their judgment carry no extra weight. Consider their opinions. They may be wise, they may be right, but they may also be wrong. In my workshops, I often tell the story of a patient whose father was an aloof, distant, and authoritarian man. He was a judge, and he demanded a high pedestal for himself, not only from the people who appeared before him court, but also from his children and wife. He could never hug his daughter, nor could he tell that he loved her. After he died, she felt that her relationship with her father was unfinished, unresolved, but she could not see him clearly. The pedestal was too high. One day, in a deeply relaxed state, my patient visualized herself in a beautiful garden. There, her father, younger and much healthier than in his declining days, appeared to her. Think of me as your brother, he lovingly instructed. Those words changed the whole tenor of their relationship. She could now see her father as an equal, no longer a superior. She could see both his virtues and his flaws much more clearly and comfortably. She could understand him and forgive him. She had been sustaining the pedestal, but now that pedestal disappeared, as did the distortion of reality that projection always causes. Love and forgiveness filled the vacuum. Often we take personally the slings and arrows of our abusers, but frequently we are merely the interchangeable pawns of their own neurotic dramas. Anyone else in your position would have received the same treatment. There is nothing especially noxious or negatively noteworthy about you. Beware of the packaging people come in. The most dangerous people often wear the most alluring packages: exciting, fun, impulsive, risky, living on the edge. Often these outer traits blind our heart's eye, and you do not see the danger. Learn to see with your heart, not your eyes. Denial, the act of not being aware of inner feelings and fears and motivations, is the opposite of mindfulness. You can say and do things that can damage the relationship. When you are awakened, when you are truly know yourself, you will now not inadvertently hurt the other person. Promoting love and understanding in the relationship. When you look into the eyes of another, any other, and you see your own soul looking back at you, then you will know you have reached another level of consciousness. Relationships need nurturing and attention. Detach from your fears and negative emotions. When you need to talk or communicate, reset your priorities. Devote time and energy to the other person. Bring your full awareness and attention to the relationship and its problems. The relationship is more important than that television, magazine, or newspaper. Eliminate distractions. Turn off the television, put down the newspaper. Respect the other person. Do not take anything for granted. Do not stay in your rut. Renew the relationship through loving actions. The relationship is living, alive in the present. It is not a thing of the past. Allow the soul to enter the relationship through awareness and understanding. This promotes an alchemy to deeper processes. Soul, or the right brain, in harmony with ego, which is the left brain. Soulful relationships bring true joy into our lives. It is safe to love completely without holding back. You can never be truly rejected. It is only when the ego is involved that we feel bruised and vulnerable. Love itself is absolute and all encompassing. The concept of loving completely and without reservation may seem risky or even dangerous to many. I'm not, however, talking about self abrogation in a relationship, nor enduring a relationship that is abusive or damaging. Doing so is not loving to yourself or to the other. Staying in a destructive relationship is not an example of loving without reservation. Instead, it may be more a manifestation of low self esteem and lack of self love than anything else. People can be dangerous, but love is not. Reach out with love and compassion to help others without concern for what you may gain. Whether you reach out to a few or to many is not important. The numbers do not matter. The act of reaching out with caring does. Sometimes, when a physician touches a patient with compassion and healing, the physician benefits more than the patient. All of us are physicians of the soul. Come from the heart, the true heart, not the head. When in doubt, choose the heart. This does not mean to deny your own experiences and that which you have empirically learned through the years. It means to trust yourself to integrate intuition and experience. There is a balance, a harmony to be nurtured between the head and the heart. When the intuition rings clear and true, loving impulses are favored. The more you practice listening to that calm inner voice, intuition, or gut feeling, the more accurate and clear the voice will become. Trust. You can trust in love. Individual decisions may appear harmful, but love is not. When the bigger picture is grasped and appreciated, the loving intent becomes clear. Your child may not understand that the antibiotic injection is a loving act. You are concerned and will spare nothing to protect your child from a potentially dangerous illness. In the child's mind, however, the injection may appear to be a hurtful act. In a more complex scenario, you may have to send a loved one away because the relationship is destructive, or his or her drug problem demands hospitalization for the person's own safety against his or her will. These are just examples of the necessity for grasping the overall picture before judging the individual decision or actions. Like many other men, I tend to think that romantic gestures have to be of the grand sort, such as jewelry, flowers, a big night out, and the like. However, I have learned that sometimes the smallest things can mean the most. Was resident in psychiatry in Connecticut. Our son Jordan was a toddler at the time, and Carol worked on a part time basis. Often, I had to work late at the hospital. On one extremely hot summer, I left the hospital at around 11 at night. On a whim, I stopped and bought two ice cream cones, one for Carol and one for me, and brought them home. Carol and I had not had a chance to talk to each other, so I had no idea that it had been a particularly trying day for her, both at work and at home. She has told me that my thinking about her and bringing her that cone has always been a favorite loving memory of hers. Help the other along her life's plan and goals. Security in a relationship comes from present, loving actions. End dependency. Do not take away self esteem, money, or confidence in order to make someone dependent on you. Do not diminish anyone. People do not leave truly loving relationships unless they are unaware. In Carol's family, there is a saying that has come down through the years that the greatest sin is to take away someone's neshuma. Translated from the Yiddish, the expression means that it is a sin to take away another's joy, or more colloquially, to rain on someone's parade. How frequently people do that to each other, and how destructive this is. We've all had that happen, and we've all had the sinking feeling that goes with it. Children who are proud of a drawing or of a singing a song or of some other small accomplishment are met with laughter instead of a pat on the back. Later in life, we sometimes find our moments of happiness ruined by someone's criticism. Even though we know that the other person's action and words are due to jealousy or feelings of inferiority or number of reasons, we still have that unhappy feeling that we had as a child. It is interesting to note that the word neshuma actually means soul. Thus, the greatest sin is to take away someone's soul. The following tips offer ways to communicate in a more compassionate and less judgmental manner. They actually are mini exercises, and if you practice these techniques often, your relationships should improve, if not prosper. Once again, take your time because the suggestions are crystallized, and feel free to be creative, to modify these techniques and suggestions as you feel fit. For example, role switching can evolve into a more formalized process where you allow yourself to reach a deeper level of relaxed concentration and try to project yourself into the other person's mind. Try to be the other person to understand his or her reactions, his or her fears and hopes and joys. This process can take as long as you need. There is no time limit. Give positive verbal messages. Hold hands more often. Compliment from the heart. All of us need to receive love as well as to give love. Try to communicate without criticism, without judgment, without any intent to hurt or harm. Communicate your love and caring and compassion. Do not communicate to harm or to win. Put aside ego and pride, as they only get in the way. Listen carefully, with detachment and perspective. Make your shared space a sanctuary so the other can speak safely. Do not speak until you have something to say, preferably something positive. Do not speak reflexively. It is always safer to be quiet, to listen, to understand. Determine the underlying fear or fears behind the thought or action. See the bigger picture and do not get distracted by the anger or emotion. See the real issue, the underlying fear that is always lurking there behind the trauma. Never act or speak from anger. Words have a lasting effect and power, and they are not easily forgotten. Never let alcohol or drugs do the talking. You can never completely erase the wounds inflicted by words of anger or hate. Winning an argument can be losing if ego is involved. Doing that which promotes love, understanding, and cooperation is true winning. If you promote negative thoughts and emotions, fear, anger, guilt, shame, sadness, anxiety, worry, and hate, either in yourself or your partner, then you have lost. Letting go of anger is difficult. We feel justified, self righteous, as if our integrity and honor are on the line, being tested. The only test in this great school we call humanity is whether we are learning to discharge anger and embrace love. Holding on to anger poisons our relationships. Continue to love even if the other is angry, hurt, and fearful. Love is a constant, anger is transient. Determine the causes of the anger, improve the conditions, and let go. How long does it take you to let go? 5 days? 3 days? 1 day? 1 hour? If you always let go within 5 days, why not in an hour? You can do it. A few years ago, I was treating a husband and wife in my office in couples therapy. This couple had intelligence and insight, and their relationship was overall fairly good. But their good times were too often interrupted by emotionally charged arguments, which inevitably led to anger and hurt feelings. They would hold on to their anger for days, each suffering miserably and each feeling very uncomfortable. Yet their pride prevented them from ending the siege earlier, from stopping their misery before it acquired a life of its own. They came into my life once after a week-long feud. For 7 straight days, the most minor of events caused the simmering anger to boil over. After about 30 minutes of therapy with them, the issues were resolved and their anger had just about dissipated. As usual, pride and hurt feelings had prolonged their angry quarrel, preventing an early resolution. I tried a new approach. In these fights of yours, fights which always are ended sooner or later, how long does it usually take for you to get over your anger and make up? Well, usually about 5 or 6 days, the husband answered. His wife agreed. Do you think you could do it in 3 days? That would still give you plenty of time to fight and stew and work things out. If you can do this in 5 days, why not in three? You always end the fight anyway. They both thought for a moment and then nodded their approval. Sure, they could fight for only 3 days instead of 5 or 6. Well, I went on. If you could make up in 3 days, why not in one day? Surely you know the whole process of your fight from the very start to the making up to the end, and you have learned all the tools necessary to resolve your differences. Can't you accelerate the process and do the whole thing in only one day? Again, they considered this proposal. Again, they agreed. One day would be enough. So, how about 6 hours? Wouldn't that be enough? After all, if you can make up in one day, why not in 6 hours? Think of how much less misery and suffering you would have. Only 6 hours. Again, this concept made sense to them, and again they agreed. I kept shortening the time span for their fights. Eventually, I got them down to 1 or 2 hours. They would recognize the cause of the incipient fight and angry feelings. They would negotiate and compromise, and they would be empathic to feelings of the other spouse. They would try to do all this in 1 hour or so. Since that time, this abbreviated fight or anger or resolution process has always worked for this couple. Then they already had realized that they always ended their fights and anger anyway. And now, instead of suffering for 5 or 6 days, they only had a short period of misery. We can all learn to compress our angry periods into recognition and rapid resolution. Eventually, we always let go of our anger. Why hold on to it and suffer needlessly? Forgive the past. It's over. Learn from it and let go. People are constantly changing and growing. Do not cling to a limited, disconnected, negative image of a person in the past. See that person now. Your relationship is always alive and changing. Begin actively loving the other right now. Do not grieve or regret not loving in the past. The past is over. Begin right now. It is never too late to express your love and compassion. When I visited Brazil in 1996, a woman said to me, very upset, I really feel terrible when I look back at the strict authoritarian way I brought up my eldest son when he was little. I was very young and immature, and I simply raised him the way my mother raised me. I wish I could start over again. I replied, love him now, the way you wish you had when he was a child. When I returned to Brazil in 1997, I met her again. She was pleased with her own progress. Regular meditation had helped her break away from the affected paralysis imposed on her by guilt, drawing her closer to her son as she showered on him all the love and affection and attention backed up within her. Visualize even more. See the gulf between you and your partner fade away and fill with a beautiful energy. You're not icebergs floating separately, but you are the water that connects them. See and feel this connection. Send your light and love. At some level, he or she will receive it. We are all connected to each other. Carol and I conduct intensive training programs several times a year. During one of these classes, Carol worked with a man who discovered the essence of love. From Carol. People often ask me if I have discovered Brian in a prior lifetime. I've had regressions for help with certain problems, but I haven't specifically looked for a past life with him. There's been no reason other than just curiosity to experience a regression to find him. It's really unimportant to me because I have always felt a very profound love and connectedness between us. But this is the reason why people often want regressions to see if someone significant in their life how now is someone they had known in a prior lifetime. Arthur was one of these people. It was the second day of one of our professional training courses, and I had just finished a presentation. Arthur, a South African man in his 60s, approached me and asked if I could help him with a problem of his, one of the reasons he had come to the group. I told him that first he should work within the group for the next few days and see what progress could be made. I expected that the answers he was seeking would reveal themselves in the intense group and individual interactions. On the fourth day, Arthur came to me and said that while he had worked with other people, there was still something that was troubling him. So while Brian was doing a large group exercise, Arthur and I went into another room and we started to work on a one to one basis. I asked Arthur what he wanted to accomplish. His beloved mother had died quite a while ago. He had four grandchildren, and although he loved all of them very much, one was particularly dear to him. He wondered if this little girl was his mother reincarnated. We decided to go back to see if his subconscious could lead him to a prior lifetime when he and his mother were together. Arthur also told me that he was not very visual at all and he thought that some of the problems he was having during the week were due to that. After a relatively short induction, we went back in time and Arthur found himself in the 1800s in England. He was a young boy standing outside. He could see the house that he lived in with his family, although he was not sure that they owned the house. I instructed him to go inside. He knew that there were people in the house who were his parents, but he could not get a very good look at them. He knew that he had siblings, but he could not get a good grasp on them either. So we went forward to a time when Arthur was going to a boarding school. Now he could see that he had a brother and sister, but his parents were still quite hazy to him. Life was very good and he was happy at the boarding school. He realized that his sister in that lifetime was his mother in this lifetime, and he was elated by this. He thought that his brother might be his son in this lifetime. In time, he became an attorney and he moved forward to his wedding day. Despite being concerned about his inability to use his visual senses, Arthur was able to see the scene in detail. At the wedding, he could see that his sister and his brother were there. He could see that his parents were also present, but he could not still make out their faces. They were still not recognizable to him, nor was he concerned with them. He was just pleased to find his brother and sister. The ceremony was lovely and Arthur was happy about the day. He explained that his marriage was one not of love but of convenience. He had grown up with this girl and their families had decided that it would be good for them to get together and get married. That was all right with him. She was a friend, and that was what was expected of him. In time, they had several children, and Arthur became a successful lawyer. Moving still forward to the day he died, Arthur could see himself as an old man surrounded by his family, his wife, and his children. He had led a very good life. He said that the marriage had developed into love. He cared for his wife deeply, and they and their children had been quite happy. We found no evidence of conflicts or traumas in that lifetime. Instead, we found an old man fading away who died surrounded by his loved ones. Then, according to Arthur, he went into what you in the States would call a tornado. He was passing into another dimension. There, Arthur could see loved ones, family, and friends waiting for him. He could see them, but he knew that he could not go to them until he first met with beings who asked him to review his life. He had to do that before he could move on. They asked him to look back on his life and to see what the theme of his life was, to determine what his life's lesson was. He took some time to consider that and then explained that the lesson had to do with not needing a great life or a momentous life or a life full of excitement or full of great happenings to be able to experience contentment and love and to give love to others. Arthur said that the beings seemed to be pleased with that answer. He was then able to join his family and friends. He was euphoric about that. He recognized several people. His brother was there. His parents were not there, they were somewhere else. They were not with his group. This was interesting because his parents in that life never were very definite to him. They were always very hazy. I asked if he could see his sister. His eyes scanned under the lids and he said, "No, she's not there." And then his face started to beam and he said, "Oh, she's coming now. Now I can see her. Yes, yes, she's part of us. She is with us." After giving him some time to savor his happiness, I again asked what was going on. He told me, "Oh, we are waiting, we are waiting. It is just waiting now to decide when to go to be reincarnated, when to come back again." I asked who was nearby, and he said there are masters there. He said they were helping him to figure out what he was going to do in his next life. Interestingly enough, he explained that the masters were there to give advice only if he asked for advice. They did not impose themselves otherwise. I inquired whether he could ask them questions about his life now. After a pause, he said, "Yes, that is possible." I suggested that he might see if they knew whether his granddaughter was the same soul as his beloved mother. Arthur was quiet for a while. Finally, he said, "They have answered me. They said, 'Did you love your mother?' And I answered, 'Yes, I loved her very much.' And they asked again, 'Do you love your granddaughter?' And I said, 'Oh, I love her very much.' And the answer from the masters was, 'Then what difference does it make? Does it really matter whether your granddaughter was your mother?' And I said, 'No, it doesn't matter at all. It's the love I feel for them. And that's what matters. Love is love.' They seemed pleased with that answer. Arthur emerged from this regression feeling extremely contented. He would search no more. Our souls exist in an energetic stream of love. We are never truly separated from our loved ones. Even though we may feel apart and unloved, our reunions can be unexpected and dramatic. That brings me to the end of this book reading. I'll continue with the book reading for chapter 4, the third part of it, tomorrow at around 7 p.m., same time. Till then, this is Vibha Nashin signing off. Take care.